Some of you may know me, some of you may not know me, but those of you that don't know me, here's a short bio on who I am. I've been in the first lien performing and non-performing note space since 1996. I've done over 22,000 transactions with over $33.7 billion in transactional history. And in 2007, I started the first distressed asset fund on Wall Street with a few partners. That we ran for approximately 2 years, and then we sold off our interest in it to the Wall Street Group. 2015, I was Mortgage Investor of the Year by Wealth and Finance Magazine. 2016, back-to-back, and 17, Best of Finance in Acquisitions International, member of the Forbes Real Estate Council. And so that's just some general stuff that I've done over the years. With that being said, my biggest why in life is really my family. It didn't used to be, I'll be really frank and honest with you, it didn't used to be because I used to travel all over the world. I used to spend, weeks on end on an airplane, traveling and speaking in front of thousands of people on stages, literally all over the world, up into Canada, over into the UK, all over the US. And that was a very costly lesson that I learned in my career, that oftentimes when you go out to help people, sometimes you end up hurting yourself. And so I quit doing those things. You won't see me standing on RIA stages and attending industry events and things of that nature, not because I don't think they have value, but because of what it costs me to do those kinds of things. And so I don't do those things anymore. I do education and things of that nature via Zoom and in small group settings and intimate settings where I can deliver a tremendous amount of what I would call at the core value, instead of just doing brushstroke type value type statements. With that, it gives me more time to focus on what is the most important thing to me, which is my family. And to me, it's family first. Hopefully you guys feel the same way. I think that's probably a lot of why you guys are around me and follow us. But there's myself and my two younger boys, Camden and Parker. They're 10-year-old twins. There's my beautiful wife there in the bottom left-hand corner. That's when we were visiting Gervasi, the winery here in Canton. We get to enjoy some downtime, which is always fun. Upper middle, pitcher. Boys playing sports. The middle picture there is me and all my children. I have 5 children total. From left to right, there's Lauren, that's my oldest daughter, and then there's Jack, who is 18 right now. And then there's Kim, and then myself, and then there's Hunter, and Hunter is 21, and he fabricates off-road trophy trucks. Jack actually works at a golf course and loves working there and enjoys it because he loves playing golf. And then obviously Camden and Parker. Here's my wife and I, we hanging out. That was when we renewed our 10-year marriage vows. And we renewed those down on the beaches in Florida. And that's obviously a picture of the twins. Here in the bottom is the twins playing golf, and us in our travels. One of the things we love to do as a family is go out and experience things. It's great to have things, but we get more value and more enjoyment out of experiences versus just having physical things. On the top right-hand corner, you'll see where this is some mission work that we've done over the years. Oh my goodness. My wife snuck that one in. I love it. So this picture right here is Camden on our most recent vacation down in Myrtle Beach. Went down there for 10 days and he caught a shark. That's a little baby shark that we did release. So we did release it back into the water. So Camden is the great white shark hunter. That was his goal. He saw some other folks catching these little sharks that were off the pier. And so he spent a couple days fishing and actually ended up catching one. Parker's he got his fish. I'm not really sure what kind of fish that was, but saltwater fish that he caught. But they had a great time. But one of the things they love to do is fish. And so we hung out there on the pier in Myrtle Beach and just fished and hung out on the beach and just had a lot of downtime as a whole. But that was a shark that Camden caught. He was very excited. So he I guess he was hoping to be Moby Dick one day, I guess. It's one of those kind of things. But yeah, so he loved it. So Camden, the Great White Shark Hunter, I guess is what you can nickname him if you see him. That being said, this is overall what it is we do as a family. I mean, we're very simple. And that's primarily because of who our mentorships are and things of that nature. One of the big things that is imperative to our family is that we always are focused on having a sense of purpose. We're always focused on planting trees that will never sit under. And what does that mean to us? It means that we go out and we do what we can to make the world a better place. We find things that we can play a role in, things that align with our value system, and things that mean something to us. Now, it's different for everybody, and we encourage people to do those things. For us, we came alongside in 2021. We sat down as a family and decided to assist a pastor friend of ours, Pastor Edgar. You'll see him and his wife there in this photo right here. And you'll see some of the construction with the women's shelter that we have decided to finance the building of. Now, we didn't start this project. This was a passion project for his wife, Alma, who's right here in this photo. And they wanted to build a women's shelter there in Mexico, primarily because in Mexico, they deal with things differently in Mexico than they do here in the US. If there's, how you say, abuse in Mexico, they separate the boyfriend, girlfriend, or the husband, wife from each other, and then they separate the kids. So everybody goes in their own direction. And that could be for 2 hours, it could be for 2 days, or it could be for 2 years. It's up to, how you say, the government there. And that was not really a solution for solving what needed to be solved. And so they wanted to build a women's shelter where they could actually provide tools and resources for folks to get help. And one of the things that we're able to do is to finance the project. And so Pastor Edgar is a contractor by trade, and he has the skill set and the labor force to build it, but he just didn't have money for materials. And I'd actually been working on this shelter since 2019, but it's tough to build something when you only work on it for 3 to 6 days a year. And so coming alongside of him and financing it was a way that we could, how you say, fast track the process. The reason I tell you that long story is simply because the cool thing about this is out of the 8 units that we're building, it's a compound, and there's 4 units facing 4 units. So it's 4 and 4, little compound with a big 12-foot wall all the way around it. You can kind of see the wall right here in this picture if you look really close. But all that being the case, we have built 6. We've completed 6 out of the 8 units, or 5 out of the 8 units. We still got 1 that we're working on, and then we're going to start the other 2. And they're all, you can see they're all connected, but we build them, I say, kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4, all that. And we are building out the kitchen. Cool thing about it is we've been using this literally for the last several years to rescue women and children from abusive situations and giving them the tools and resources to overcome that and put those types of, I say, experiences behind them. And we're doing it through the Word of God. We're doing it through counseling. We're doing it through monetary assistance. We're doing it through food. We're doing it through shelter. We're doing it through a lot of different aspects of it. And our role is pretty simple. We don't live in Mexico. I'm not a counselor. Kim's not a counselor. But one of the things that we're able to do because of the things that we've done for years is to bless them, and to do that in a way of through monetary donations. And that's really something that we love. We have worked on the shelter on several occasions. We've gone down as a family. I've gone down in men's groups. I've gone down in family mission trips as well. So we're constantly involved. And what's cool about Pastor Edgar and Alma is that myself and my older 2 boys actually, and even Kim was involved in that, actually helped them build their church. That was probably about 18 years ago that we helped build their church. So long history there, a long history of friendship and fellowship. So that's what we do as a family. that's something that we get to do. We get to play a hand in it. We get to play a role in it. We get to do all kinds of cool things about it. And we get to know that there's going to be trees that are planted that we're never going to sit under, that people will go through the doors of this shelter and have a better life because of it, and help to break generational curses because of that. So that's a big thing on our heart. What is my business background? Well, I have literally been in business since I was 17 years old. And I grew up in a family of business owners. My entire family, both sides, my mom and my dad's side, were entrepreneurs in literally every sense of the word. There were a few siblings. My dad was the only boy of the family. He had 3 sisters. And my mother was the only girl of the family, and she had 4 brothers. 2 of my dad's sisters were entrepreneurs, and one worked for Chrysler. And my dad was an entrepreneur, contractor, pool builder. Did that for about 35 years. And my mom comes from a family and where my uncles, her brothers, were all entrepreneurs. They own international and domestic freight shipping companies. My grandparents owned banks. They owned secretarial services. They owned, they were investors in Xerox. They were investors in Enterprise, Rent-A-Car, all kinds of things that they did over the years. But more importantly, what I learned in being around all of these folks was business. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, and all that were much different in our houses than I've learned that other people experience. I did not realize until I grew up as an adult that people didn't just sit around and talk about business. And it was one of those things that I just took for granted as a young man, and even took for granted as a young adult, not realizing that other families didn't do the same thing. Why? I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I assumed other people, their parents or their aunts and uncles had businesses. And what I learned as I grew older was that was actually the exception to the rule and not commonplace in business. Now, mind you, this all happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and even into the 2000s. I still have a lot of aunts and uncles that are business owners to this day. All that being the case, we would talk about business strategies, we talk about taxes, we talk about business structure, we talk about relationships. And a lot of that was spearheaded because my grandfather was deep into politics. It wasn't uncommon as a kid to show up at my grandparents' house to go over to mow their yard. And there would be Senator Barry Goldwater sitting there at the kitchen table having a conversation with my grandfather, or Governor Bruce Babbitt sitting there having a conversation with my grandfather. And I never really thought much about it because I was just a kid coming over to mow the yard and to make $20. And I was headed to the mall after that because I was going to go hit the arcade and go play, arcade games, pinball machines and stuff like that. I know some of you don't understand what pinball machines are, but it was a big thing back when I was a kid. You actually had to pay to play these types of things. You had to have a quarter. And if you're really good, you can make your quarter last 1 or 2 games, get more than 1 game out of it. But my point being is that wasn't a focus. It was something I was introduced to. It was something I was around. There were typically times I'd be sitting down at the other end of the table eating lunch while they're having a conversation at the other end of the table. My grandparents had one of those like 12-person tables in their dining room, and I would sit at one end, and my grandfather would sit at the other end having a conversation. I would sit and listen. I would sit and not say a word, if that makes any sense. I don't know if any of you grew up that way, but you were to be seen and not heard, at the table. Now, all that being said, I absorbed a lot. And as I got into high school and decided to open up my own business, which was in the area of landscape contracting, my grandfather was an advisor to me. He was also my accountant, and he was also the person that prepared my taxes and things of that nature. Now, one of the things I used to get irritated about with my grandfather was he was a practicing accountant prior to the inception of the IRS. Okay. So he dealt with businesses all the time. Now, the cool thing about it was he was very knowledgeable, not only about business, but when tax law came out, he understood how to apply the tax law and tax code along the way. And there were certain things that he shared with me that I've applied throughout my entire life when it comes to running a business. And I often will cringe when I hear people talk about, well, I made $1 million this year and I had to pay taxes on $1 million profit. And when I hear things like that, the first word that crosses my mind is they're a rookie. They're a rookie. But on the same time, people get mad because Elon Musk doesn't pay taxes or Donald Trump doesn't pay taxes. Well, you know who else doesn't pay taxes? The president, folks in the Senate, folks in the House of Representatives, Jeff Bezos, Apple Computer, Microsoft, all of these folks. I wouldn't say they don't pay taxes, but they limit what they actually pay in taxes. And they do it by using the tax code. Now, why does this matter? Why is this part of today's session? Because what I've learned is if you can master and understand simple, basic aspects to running a business, you can actually earn more, pay less, and enjoy life to the fullest. Now, what does it mean? What I mean when I say that? When I see people like on social media, hey, I just bought this Rolls Royce, and hey, I just did this, and hey, I just did that. What they're doing is they're being very flashy. So they're drawing a lot of attention to themselves. That's flaw number one. Don't do those kinds of things. Don't draw attention to yourself in public platforms. Now, I was raised in an environment where social media wasn't a tool that you used to run a business. It wasn't a tool that you had at your fingertips. It certainly wasn't on your cell phone. I mean, when I had a cell phone, I had the old brick cell phone, the big, tall, white one with the black antenna that was 12 inches tall. The antenna had to go above your head so it could catch a signal type thing. Yeah, they weren't pocket friendly, any of that stuff. That was the first cell phone that I ever had. So the idea of running a business and growing a business on a social media platform was a foreign, far off concept because you weren't, I say, what's the word? I want to say intimidated, but that's not it. Enticed to, how do you say, boast about your wealth and things of that nature. I share that with you because what I'm going to share with you today is a model that my grandfather did and all my mentors have. The average age of my circle of mentors is 73 years old. I'm not going to tell you what their average net worth is, but let's just say it's high, like really high. I can tell you what the average price of the car is that they drive, and it's around $40,000. I can tell you that none of them, or very few of them, have any kind of social media presence. I can tell you that they own a lot of real estate. I can tell you that they are the epitome of go-givers without recognition as a whole. Like, they don't post on social media that they gave, $200 to send a kid to camp or something like that. Like, that's just not what they do. That's not who they are. This is what I grew up around. So I do things because of the way they do things. So I share that to now share with you how, if this even is of interest to you, how it all is put together in a way that can build something that I think a lot of people truly want to build. And that is Proverbs 13:22 states, good people leave an inheritance to their grandchildren, but the sinner's wealth passes to the godly. And that's in the New Living Translation. Every one of my mentors have built businesses that have been passed down to their grandchildren. And I caught on to this idea when I was in my late 20s, when I heard, of all people, when Garth Brooks, total sidebar, when Garth Brooks retired from music, one of the things I remember him saying, now when you live in Texas, you're a Garth Brooks fan automatically. So just FYI, I lived in Texas at the time. So, and I loved watching Garth Brooks when he played. He was new country singer out on the scene. Long story short, when he retired from country music, he made a comment, a public statement. He says, I don't have to sing ever again because I've made enough money for my children's children's children. So he went back like several generations. And I was like, man, that is a really, really cool statement. Now, mind you, I was just getting into the note space when he said that. And it was something that's always stuck in the back of my mind. And because of that, it's fueled a lot of the decisions that I've made over the life of my career. And where I see a lot of people will take the path of heavy lifting and things of that nature, I'll tend to look at things very different from more of a passive income, plug and play type model. And I'm going to share with you what that looks like here in just a minute and why it is that we do some of the things we do. In the world of business, in the world of life, there's two main ways to build wealth. Number one, being a business owner / operator, or you got to own real estate. Now, I'm going to share with you today how you can do both. And when I say real estate, I'm talking about real estate notes. I'm talking about apartments. I'm talking about storage units, whatever your fancy is when it comes to real estate. I don't think you can go wrong in any of it. It's really dependent upon you and your passion and what connects with you. And for me, notes were the thing that connected with me because it's what banks did. And banks were the ones that always had the most amount of money. And I looked at it, well, banks aren't into real estate. Trust me, they're not into real estate. Matter of fact, the majority of the buildings that they house their offices in, they don't even own. They lease them, they'll rent from the building owner, but they don't own them. But what they do know is the power of compound interest. And so they'll lend you and me money to buy a house, to buy a rental property, buy an apartment building, but they're not going to come in there and manage it, fix it up, pick paint colors and all that other stuff. That's not their business model. And as long as you make payments to them, they're going to leave you alone and you're going to leave them alone. And they're going to go on about their day and you're going to go on about your way. That's a webinar for a whole nother day. And I can break that down and show you guys why it is they end up making more money than anybody who owns real estate. But all that being said, in America, there's two ways to build wealth. There's being a business owner of any kind, because believe it or not, more millionaires are not created by real estate, just FYI. More millionaires are created in the financial markets than any other industry as a whole. Real estate is actually number 4 on the list, but financial markets is number 1. So say, take Michael Bloomberg, for example. He's in the financial markets. So more millionaires are created in the financial markets than in real estate, but majority of millionaires, if not all of them, own some level of real estate in their portfolio. I'm going to show you how they do that. Finance and investment fields have the most millionaires and billionaires. I just wanted to put that in there. Okay. How many years do businesses last? So let's touch on this, because everybody wants to touch on real estate, fix and flip, rental properties, paint colors, lease agreements, and all that other stuff, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. but people don't pay attention to the business side of it. How does your business operate? How does your business function? Are you even going to be here as a whole? Have you set yourself up to be here? And according to the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as reported by Fundera, approximately 20% of small businesses fail within the first year. By the end of the second year, it's 30% of businesses will have failed. And by the end of the fifth year, over half will have failed. That's a pretty sad statistic when you look at our country as a whole and the amount and the abundance of opportunity in literally any industry as a whole. But I think most businesses fail for a couple of reasons, and I'll share with you what that is. And this is actually from the same article. Number one, faulty infrastructure or business model. Well, in other words, they don't really have a business model. They have an idea. Lack of capital or funding. They don't have any money to really start. So they're trying to start it on a shoestring budget. Retaining or having an inadequate management team. Sometimes it's even them. Sometimes it's the business owner that is the inadequate management team. Sorry, it happens. Okay. Unsuccessful marketing as a whole. Oftentimes people will go into the idea of like, hey, I'm going to open up a business and the doors are people are just going to come blazing through the doors. No, they're not. Okay. No, they're not. Now, I grew up in an era where word of mouth was the best advertising you could have. I still think that's the case to this day. But we didn't have social media. We didn't have websites. We didn't have all of these different things that people have today. So you did things a lot differently back then than people do nowadays when it comes to marketing and things of that nature. Not better or worse, just different. Okay. We have different tools that we can use today. But I want to talk with you guys first and foremost about step one here, the most common reason, the faulty infrastructure or business model. And there's two levels to a business model. There's a personal business model, and then there's a business model as a whole. So I'm going to share with you how the two of them connect and how I would encourage you to look at things in order to build generational wealth. So if oftentimes I've found that most people don't go in the direction that they want to go because they don't have a roadmap to go there. They have an idea like, hey, I want to go to Disney World. Okay, well, living in Ohio and driving to Florida, there's a lot of different highways that I can take to get to Disney World. The question then becomes, which one's going to be the safest? Which one's going to be the best? Which one's going to have the least amount of construction on it? Which one's going to be, have multiple lanes for passing and driving at maybe a higher rate of speed? Which one's going to have more cities that you go through for rest stops and things of that nature? You think about those things when you have kids, by the way. So which one's going to be the best? Because literally, I could go literally in 10 different directions from my house to get to Disney World as a whole. Well, it's the same thing is true with business. You have an idea, okay, what's taking that idea and finding that correct path to go on is what oftentimes determines whether a person has a faulty infrastructure or a faulty business model. Like it wouldn't be smart for me to drive out of Ohio and head west towards California in order to go to Disney World, which is located in Orlando, Florida. I could do it, but it's going to put a lot of miles on my car, a lot of wear and tear on my vehicle, going to cost me extra gas, going to cost me extra time and more food, more hotel, more lodging, all of those things. It's going to be more expensive to do that. But I find most business owners do that as a whole. They go off in this direction. They'll choose a path that they think is the right one, and ultimately it ends up costing more time, money, and energy. I'm a personal fan of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Just a fact, okay? Ever since I heard that in school, it's always something that I've applied to business, hence why I do things the way that I do, because the number one thing I want to get to is an answer as quickly as possible. If I have an idea, I want to see if the idea works so I can get a yes or no answer as quickly as possible. I want to find out if it works. If it does, great, we'll do more of it. If it doesn't, let's figure out why it didn't work and figure out either how to correct it or abort the idea altogether and go in a different direction. And I do that because it's money like speed, business like speed. And so that creates speed at the end of the day. All right. Let's talk about faulty infrastructure or business model. What does a successful model look like? Okay. We can talk about unsuccessful models all day long, but let's not waste our time today. And let's talk about what a successful business model looks like. Now, what do I know? How do I know that this is a successful business model? Because I've been doing it for over 20 years. Okay. It's got a 20-year track history. In the note space, it's over 28 years, but the model I'm going to share with you today has been in existence for me, 20 plus years, all the bits and pieces. Okay. Here is my own personal business structure. Now, as you can see, this is a single slide, so I couldn't put every single detail in the world about every single thing that I do. So I'm going to kind of explain it, break it out a little bit for you. Our operations are simple. We run from January 1st to December 31st. We base it on a calendar year. Our core aspect is we run everything around a family trust. Okay. That family trust is owned by a non-disclosed LLC. Okay. That non-disclosed LLC is, I'm not going to share what the name is, where it's at, because it's non-disclosed for a reason. This creates what I call a bulletproof model. Okay. Bulletproof model. Now, this was shared with me from an attorney friend of mine who was the #1 trial attorney in the state of Arizona. And he had a perfect trial record, meaning that he would take on cases and take them to trial. And he was a civil attorney. So he practiced civil law, not criminal law. He practiced civil law. And he would go in and he would win lawsuits. And people would oftentimes hide behind LLCs and irrevocable trust and revocable trust and all of these things. And he would pierce every single one of them because they were pierceable. What a lot of people don't realize is you set up an LLC, it's pierceable if it's not done correctly. Well, there's only one way to do it correctly. And right here is that model. Now, there's a lot of intricate details that go into this, but from a 10,000 foot view, this gives you an idea of what it looks like. I'll tell you the #1 reason why LLCs are pierceable is because people will set up an LLC and they'll use it as their own banking, their own personal banking model. Meaning that if you take money out of the business account and you don't withdraw it correctly, meaning like, let's say you had a business account and you decided to pay for Disney World tickets on the debit card for that business account. That creates an opening for it to be pierced, just FYI. Okay. How do they find out? Well, if you're involved in a lawsuit, they're going to subpoena all your bank records and all your expenses and things of that nature for that LLC. And they're going to find where the hole is, and then they're going to drive the truck right through it. And he would do this time and time and time again. So if you need money, just FYI, if you need money out of your LLC, move it over to your personal account and pay for whatever you want to out of that personal account. So if you want to go to Disney World and you want to pay for those tickets to Disney World, then move the money out of your business into your personal account and then pay for the Disney World tickets out of your personal account. Just FYI. I know there's a lot of you that are all freaked out right at this second, but I'm just telling you, that's one of the easiest ways to pierce an LLC. Just FYI. Just FYI. So having an LLC doesn't mean that you have protection. And most trial attorneys know this. As a matter of fact, any trial attorney that is civil law knows this and makes it very easily to do so. All that being said, let's continue on. So I have a non-disclosed holding LLC. That actually has, well, I'm not going to get into the breakdown of it, but there's a ownership structure in that prevents and mitigates any kind of legal repercussions. The number one reason people get sued in America is because they're showy, meaning they go out and buy fancy cars and they post them all over social media. They go out and they buy big houses. They post it all over social media. They do those kinds of things and it attracts attention. And oftentimes, and sometimes, it can attract the wrong attention. And the wrong attention can bring about some favorable ideas, which is, or I say issues, and you want to avoid those things. But so we have a non-disclosed LLC. Our family trust is held under that. And then under our family trust is our daily operating S Corp. Yes, we run an S Corp. And Kim and I get a payroll check out of the S Corp once a year. I'm not going to get into how that works. It works legally. It's within the ramifications of the IRS code, which works for us at the end of the day. Okay. So, and it keeps it from being pierced as well. On the left side, this isn't really in any particular order per se, but as a whole, we have our insurance policies, which are owned. The beneficiary is the family trust. Why? Because if something happens to me, I want the money going into the family trust and not to, the children or to Kim. Now, Kim would still remain as a trustee of the trust, so she can control it. But if it went into her personal account, guess what? It's traceable. It's traceable, okay? And the minute it becomes traceable in that kind of personal environment, it also becomes public knowledge. And then what happens? You get all these financial advisors calling you, telling you do this, do this, do this, do that. Well, I don't want that kind of stuff for my family if something were to happen to me. So our insurance policies go into the family trust, and then they're dispersed according to the rules and the guidelines of the trust. Our notes, the notes, they are held in a different entity, and that entity operates on its own. So all the revenue that comes in is used to go buy more notes, which creates a compounding aspect to the notes, which creates a generational aspect to the cash flow at the end of the day. We have royalties. We have royalties from books I've written. We have royalties from consulting. We have royalties from other types of things that we own as well, other investments, and that comes in there. We have our nonprofit. I shared my nonprofit with you. We have a checkbook IRA that we use to buy assets with. Now, what I love about the checkbook IRA is you pay a pre-tax to the money going in, and you don't pay any tax on the money coming out, which works great for us. Now, it's limited as to how much money you can put into it, but you can actually overfund it, and you'll be hit with a tax on the overfunding portion of it, but it's a one-time tax, and therein lies the ability to, overfund it if you need to. I have other ways that we fund it. We can talk about that maybe on another call. We have our personal residence. Our personal residence is owned by the trust. Our oil well that we buy, as we buy oil wells, the revenue that comes in is used to buy more oil wells. Now, what I love about oil wells is 100% of the investment of the oil well is a write-off. 15% of the income that comes in every month is also tax-free. So it leaves 85%, which is income, but that 85% gets reinvested into more oil wells, which means it never shows up as income on our returns. Okay? So I like taxation on income versus capital gains and things of that nature. I'll share with you why here in just a minute. Then we have our gold buying and gold trading. And then we have our boys custodial account, which we put money into. And then out of that, we pay for other things for the children. Why do we do that? Because I can put money over there tax-free every year for each child. And I can pull money out of that to pay for things that they need. Education, clothes, those kinds of things. And it's all automatically tax-free. Why do I like that? Because if I don't do that and I just pull it out and put it into my personal account, now I have to pay income tax on that. I don't want to pay income tax on that as a whole. And then we have our solo 401k. Why do I like solo 401ks? Because it's a post-tax account, meaning I can pull out prior to writing our check at the end of every year for Kim and I can pull out the maximum amount, which I believe is 19,000 for me, and I think it's about 10,000 for her, around 30,000 a year, and put it over there tax-free. Now, why is that cool? Well, I can put it over there. It operates at about a 12 to 14% return every single year, and it simply grows. And yes, I'll pay a post-tax on it when I take it out, but nonetheless, I get to use the money tax-free. It becomes a line item tax deduction. The same way you would depreciate a rental property, you get the tax benefit up front, but when you go to sell the rental property, you have to recapture all that depreciation and pay capital gains on all of it. So it works the same way, but for some reason, people love the real estate side of it, which is actually a higher capital gains, by the way, than say a solo 401k. And we have learned through, I say counseling, or not, I say mentorship and stuff like that, how to in turn take that solo 401k and actually turn it into tax-free money going in and tax-free money coming out. Okay, so that's why I love to use it as well. And then our daily operating company. This is where we wholesale notes, buy and sell notes. We do education. We do whatever else needs to be done inside of that corporation. And that's our core business. Now, we use it as an S corp because we will take all the deductions that we can every single year in every single way possible. And we will minimize our tax liability at the end of the year, even to the point where we will zero out our tax liability, even with massive profits, by simply doing one simple thing. I'll share this with you. Write this down. Let's say you had a business that had a profit of, say, $50,000. To eliminate any tax liability on that $50,000, you can legally take the 50 grand on December 30th and buy $50,000 worth of gold or silver or platinum or palladium. You can even buy a note. A lot of people go out and buy cars, which creates more debt, but nonetheless, let's use gold as an example. You can go and buy $50,000 worth of gold on December 30th. Now you've taken the 50 grand, you bought an asset, which is gold. You now are holding the asset inside of your corporation. And then literally on January 3rd, you could sell the gold back to whoever you bought it from. There's companies that do that all over the country, and get your 50 grand cash back. Now, you're not going to get 50 grand back. You're probably going to get about 48 grand back, saying that gold price stays the same. But the question then becomes, do I take a $2,000 loss, or do I let the IRS take $18,000 out of the 50 grand? Choice is yours. These are things that wealthy people do. These are things that people have been doing for decades. This is stuff that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and what's his name, Zuckerberg and Gates, and all these guys. They all do the same stuff. They know by the end of the year, they have to deploy any and all capital into assets for, say, a week. And then they'll pull that capital back into their company after the clock has expired and a new clock has started, meaning December 31st into January 1st. Now you don't have any tax liability. What most people do is they'll just leave the cash in the bank and they'll give it over to their accountant, and then their accountant does what they do, which is they just take your figures and your numbers and they input it into their software, and it spits out what you owe based on assets, liabilities, depreciation, things of that nature. Well, one of the biggest things that gets taxed is cash on hand. How much cash on hand do you have? And if you have a sizable amount, it's open to taxation. So when people talk about the tax code, which by the way is about 6,900 pages, 6,900 pages of tax code, there's about another 69,000 pages of how to interpret the tax code for all the different things that you can do in business. Well, that being said, how do you interpret tax code with all of the different options that are out there? Well, most accountants don't know how to interpret it. They're just simply all using software. They're inputting the information. They know how to read P&L sheets and balance sheets and all that other stuff. And you're basically coming to them with the numbers and saying, here's what I did. I learned a long time ago that the type of question you ask determines the quality of answer that you get. Okay. So if you go to your tax accountant and you say, hey, I'm going to buy this new car and I need it to be, I'm going to go buy this new car and we're going to write it off. Well, your accountant might say, no, you're not, because of a lot of reasons. That might be the fact that you're buying the wrong kind of car for a write-off. Your structure won't, fold that in. It won't fold into your structure. The way that you're buying it may not allow you to actually have a write-off. And so rather than saying what you're going to do, you ask them, what do I need to do? So how do I do this versus I'm going to do this? Okay. So my grandfather taught me that a long time ago. Don't just go out and do something. Ask, how can I do this? I want to buy a new vehicle and I want it to be a write-off in my company. Well, there's certain things that have to, apply to get it to be a true write-off. Now, a lot of people get what I call the token write-off. What's the token write-off? Mileage. But then you got to track mileage. Then you have to calculate mileage. Then you have to do this and you have to do that. Well, unless you're doing it every single day, every time you get in that vehicle, your records are going to be auditable. Or, you're going to lose in an audit. So rather than even subject yourself to that, why not just buy the right car that you want? I'm a truck guy, so I like trucks. And so I will buy a truck that fits into our company. So case in point, a couple weeks ago, I think it was, it's almost been 2 months. We had 3 cars. Okay? We had 3 cars. And one of the cars just sat in the garage all the time. We had a Mercedes S550, and it really just sat in the garage. It's not a fun car to drive on icy roads or snowy roads or with salt roads and stuff like that. So I just wouldn't take the car out during the wintertime, which really stinks because now I've got this beautiful car sitting in this garage that I don't ever get to drive. And I love driving it. Do love driving it. So in April, I drove by a dealership, GMC dealership, and I saw 2 vehicles sitting in the lot. One was a GMC Sierra Denali Ultimate, so top of the line truck, beautiful white with beautiful interior and all that. And then it had right next to it a Yukon, both 2023s brand new, no miles. And so I called up the dealership. This is on an evening time. Next morning, I called up the dealership. A guy I'd talked with a few times, anyways. I said, "Hey, I got 3 cars. I want to trade 3 cars in for 2." Now, the thing about it was, I told him point blank. I said, "These 2 cars are personal cars: the Mercedes and the Yukon, or at the time it was a Cadillac. The Mercedes, my accountant would never let me write it off. I said, "You can't write that off. Can't write that off. You can write off mileage. You can write off mileage." I said, "I don't want to write off mileage. I don't ever drive the thing. I've had the thing for 2 years. I've driven 3,000 miles in 2 years. This is silly." Maybe it was 4,000 miles. It wasn't driven a lot. I very rarely drove it. I said, "I don't want to write off mileage. Mileage stinks. It doesn't even compute to what the car's worth. And it's a lot of extra work that I don't want to do." You can't write it off, Troy. Can't write it off. Not in the business name. You didn't buy it in the business name. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. I said, "All right, great. I'm gonna solve this problem." We had this conversation in February this year. So within 2 months, I take all 3 cars. I go to the dealership. I trade in the Mercedes, which I got less than I owed for it. I trade in my Ram truck, which I got more than I owed for it, a lot more than I owed for it, which was fine. And we traded in the 2 cars for my truck. Now, here's why I did that. Real simple. Here's why I did that. Because the loss that I took on the Mercedes rolled into a business loss into the truck. Okay, rolled into a business loss in the truck. All the equity that I had in my Ram truck covered that. Between the 2 vehicles, I didn't pay any tax, any sales tax on the new vehicle. And then I bought the new vehicle inside of the LLC, and it stands on its own merit as a loan in the company. This company down here, to be exact. So 100% of everything I do to that vehicle is now 100% deductible. Gas, insurance, upgrades. If I want to go put a lift kit on it, a bunch of extra tires and wheels and stuff on it, I could do that. My boys would love it. My wife would hate it. The truck would get taller. She wouldn't like that. Short people don't like tall trucks, just FYI. So my point being is I don't have to track anything on that. The Yukon was because the Cadillac was paid for, is a personal vehicle. So in the world of business, I now have a business vehicle and I now have a personal vehicle. Why do I do that? Because it doesn't red flag my tax returns. I've never, ever gone through an IRS audit, ever. And I've been in business since I was 16 years old. So I play by a different set of rules. And the rules I play by are understand what you can do, because 90% of the tax code is tax deductions. The question is, how can I use that tax deduction in my business? I want to buy a vehicle. I want to write it off. How can I do it? And find out how to do it and then do it. Now, the cool thing about when you buy a vehicle like the truck I just bought, and this has happened for the last several trucks I've bought, and people always ask me, well, why do you buy a vehicle? Why do you do this? Why do you get a new one? I mean, heck, I got 3 new trucks in 1 year. I had 3 new trucks in 1 year. Not really by design, by the way, but it just kind of happened. Long story short, I get 100% write-off on the vehicles. I didn't do that on all 3 of those trucks, but I took the most expensive one, which was the last one, and took the write-off on that. And so I automatically, if I spend 80 grand on the vehicle, I get an $80,000 write-off immediately on my taxes. Well, that's $80,000 worth of income that I don't have to pay taxes on. Yeah, I might have a payment on my truck, but I'm going to keep it for a little while and I'm going to move on. My interest rate on my truck is a 2.9% interest rate. It's low. If you don't believe me, go see what cars are financed for nowadays. It's in the company name. Okay, it's 100% the company name, which means it doesn't show up on my personal credit report. So my debt to income looks amazing because of that. Okay, so those are little things that you can do. And the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset is oftentimes people will look at it from a fixed mindset saying, well, I don't want to make that payment. I don't want this. I don't want that. And that's okay. Then you're going to pay the taxes on your 80 grand and I'm not going to pay it on mine. Actually, it was about $90,000 for that truck. That's the difference. So I'm going to keep on that 90 grand. I'm not going to pay $30,000 of it to the IRS. I'm going to put that in my pocket, or I'm going to go buy more gold, or I'm going to go buy more notes, or I'm going to go buy another oil well with it. And you're going to, in a person with a fixed mindset is going to continue to drive an old rundown car. Because there's only two things that apply to business: making the money and then preserving the money. Most people waste the money on things, which means they have to go make more money. And then they get into this vicious cycle where the business wears them out. And when the business wears you out, you don't want to run the business anymore, because you quit your W-2 to go start a business, and you got to starting your business, and now you're working 80 hours a week. Well, I was working 80 hours a week in my W-2. Exactly. That's what happens to most people, because they don't learn how to preserve the capital. Making it's one thing, preserving it's something else. And then creating generational wealth with it, or multiple generational wealth with it, is a whole nother thing. Okay. So I'm gonna move on here. So these are some of the items that anyone, by the way, anyone can do this, not just me, but anyone can do this. You can write off your cars, your gas, your auto insurance. I forgot to put maintenance in there, oil changes, car washes, details, any of those things you can all put in there. Travel. Like I said, we love to travel. We travel for business. All of that becomes a write-off in our business. Airlines, rental cars, Airbnb, hotels, etc. Health insurance. We have a health insurance model that 100% of our health insurance costs are paid, are tax write-off. It's a line item tax write-off, and it's through a model called TASC, TASC, and that includes even prescriptions and everything of that nature. So all of that becomes a 100% pre-tax write-off. Dining out. Currently, IRS code says you can dine out as much as you want. It's a 100% write-off. I personally don't think that that's a great use of money, because personally, as much as I used to like dining out, I like it less nowadays, because I think the food quality is mediocre and it's more expensive. So we don't do that as much as we used to. But for those of you that do that, it can it's part of it. And when we travel, obviously we do dine out, unless we're doing Airbnb and we'll fix our own food. Mortgage, insurance, and upkeep of our house. Our house is held in our trust. Well, our trust has its own account, which means our trust is responsible for paying for the mortgage. Our trust is responsible for paying for the insurance on the house. Our trust is responsible for the landscaper that comes by and mows the yard. Our trust is responsible for any upkeep or any changes in the house. I'm going to be redoing this back wall here pretty soon. Guess who's going to pay for this back wall to be redone? The trust is going to pay for it. So when you put things like that in a trust, now it's the trust responsibility to pay for it. Okay. And you have assets inside the trust that produce that income to make it happen. Utilities, internet, cell phone bills, computers, things of that nature, our children's education, clothing, food, expenses, as I mentioned that. Professional services, legal, accounting, continuing education, postage, banking, office expenses, marketing, website, title reports, BPOs. Another big thing that we do at the end of every single year is, prior to it coming up, is we'll go through our list of, I say, office equipment and expenses and stuff like that, and we'll determine whether or not we need to upgrade things. So it's not uncommon for us to go out at the end of every year and buy new laptops. It's not uncommon for us to go out at the end of every year and get new cell phones. It's not uncommon for us to do certain things, because if I don't do it, then it opens it up to a taxable occurrence. I don't want it to be a taxable occurrence. I want the income to come in, then I'm going to spend it how I see fit, whether it's through assets or tax deductions. I'm going to get as close to zero as humanly possible by the end of the year, a net zero. And then I'm going to give that number to the IRS and let them take their fee. And then January 1st, I'm going to start all over again. And I know that because I've created the passive income model that continues to fuel it time and time and time and time again. Now, I don't know what other people do, but for us, it works extremely well. At the end of the day, we live a very blessed lifestyle. We live in a beautiful house, we live in a beautiful neighborhood, and we get to travel. We get to do things that we love to do, and it funnels and it runs itself all the time. This is also the same structure or similar structure that the folks that I would consider mentors and great friends of mine use as well. They do different things with their money. You could buy a house at the end of the year. You could buy a note at the end of the year. You could do whatever it is you want to do. There comes a point when you realize that your current path is not leading you to financial freedom that you've envisioned. I want to introduce you to a training. This is not really a training. It's a business accelerator, 90-day business accelerator opportunity. It's called Pivot, which stands for Passive Income, Vision, Opportunity, and Transformation. Pivot is a business accelerator one-on-one mentorship and personal training program that addresses these 4 main points, 4 core areas of focus: building out a successful business model for you that works in accordance to what you want to do, identifying seed capital and or funding that you're going to need, building a management team around you, or if you're the management team, showing you how to manage things properly, creating a marketing game plan for you using what I call AI, artificial intelligence, which is we've developed an artificial intelligence software that we use that we're actually going to give anybody that wants to participate in Pivot. It does amazing stuff when it comes to marketing. Since I'm providing personalized service to each individual in a one-on-one capacity, truth is I can only do 10. Okay, maximum I can do is 10. Because I don't want this, I say, consuming my life as a whole for obviously various reasons, because I love to travel and we love to spend time with our family. It's limited to maximum 10. I can't go over that. I just don't have the time. It's just not in the calendar. The Pivot Business Accelerator requires a personal application and an interview process to receive an invitation to attend. Here's the bottom line. We want to make sure that we're a good fit for you, and we want to make sure you're a good fit for us. That whatever your dreams and visions are, whatever your goals are, wherever your business is, this doesn't just apply to a note business. It doesn't apply to just that. It can apply to any business model that you have, because what I'm looking to do is look at the foundational aspects of what you're doing and to figure out if you're really going in the direction that you want to go according to the vision that you have for your business. And so we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty on it and make sure that we put together a blueprint that you can successfully execute over and over and over and over again and get to a point where you can really truly start building generational wealth. A lot of people talk about building generational wealth, but their business model stinks when it comes to building it. So why is that? Well, because if you go from a W-2 mindset to a business mindset, they're 2 totally different mindsets. People often ask, like, are you hireable? No, you can't hire me. I won't work for you. Okay. I make a terrible employee working for other people. I just do. I've done that before. I was miserable. They were miserable. It just didn't work. Went out on my own, was successful. Their business went out of business. Interesting concept there. But nonetheless, it just didn't work for me. And so what we're looking to do in the business accelerator model is to find a handful of people, 10 at the max, that are interested in taking what they have as a business, or if they're looking to start a business, okay, what are we looking to start? And identifying what it's going to take to accomplish that generational wealth model that they're looking to accomplish, okay, as a whole. What you get with the Pivot Business Accelerator, each applicant will start with a personal one-on-one business structure review. So I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to do a one-on-one 1-hour call on Zoom, and we're going to go over your entire business. There's a whole series of questions you got to answer before we get on that call, so we have an understanding of where you're at, where you're going, and things like that, and identify what areas can be improved to help reach your goals. Then we're going to get into 12 weeks of spending 12 weeks worth of time together. Okay, so this is a 90-day accelerated program. 90 days, like I said, limited to 10 people, and it's for a limited amount of time. Okay, this isn't a 12-month coaching program or any of those things. Why? I don't think you really need 12 months. I think what most people want is they want a blueprint that they can fast track and get up and running to move the needle in their business. I don't want to take 12 months to do that. Just like I didn't want to take 12 months to lose weight. So I got with a coach that would show me how to start moving the needle in my health and start losing weight. I didn't want to wait till month 12 to get it going. So we don't do that. So during our 12 weeks together, 12 weeks, not 12 months, we'll personally work. I will personally work with you, and I work with you on setting up, improving your business structure, work with you on your business plan, help you get your trust set up. So if you want to trust, like the one I just shared with you folks, and I'll show you, I'll introduce you to my attorney. Okay, personally introduce you to him, where he will help you get that set up. I will also guide you in how to manage it. Okay, manage it. And this is kind of the core of the business accelerator model. And that is, and even if you don't have a lot of money, like, hey, Troy, I just got a house and I got 3 rental properties. Great. You're the ideal candidate, because that being said, you're starting at the beginning. I didn't do that. Okay. I was way down the road, and then I was introduced to this concept. So I had to move a lot of things and do a lot of things. It took a little more work for me to put mine together versus just being at the beginning. The cool thing about the family trust, and I didn't talk about this, is that it also incorporates a living will, power of attorney, all of those other things that are important to have as a father, as a husband, as a leader, to have those kinds of things. Because one of the things that often happens in America is when somebody passes away, they don't have a will, it goes to probate. You all know that. You're in the business, you're in the real estate space. You know that that's a niche of buying houses from probate courts and probate attorneys. Why is it such a big niche? Because so many people don't do it. So unless you want your stuff doing that same stuff, you need to do those things in advance. Okay. So I'm going to hook you up with my attorney and let you guys work it out. And I'm going to show you how to manage it. Each approved applicant will get 6 personal one-on-one calls. We're going to do 12 weeks of training, 12 weeks together, and we're going to do 6-week personal calls, 6 personal calls every other week. And you and I are going to get on the phone, and we're going to map out and track step by step what you're doing. So I'm your accountability coach. Now, if you don't feel comfortable with an accountability coach, don't come this way. Okay, don't come this way, because I'm looking to create a 100% success rate in everybody that's part of this program. And if you don't want to be coached, you're not open to being coached, even if you don't like my style of coaching, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If you don't want that, you don't feel comfortable with that, you don't want to do that, then don't come this way. Okay. Don't take somebody else's spot. That's what I'm basically saying. Don't take somebody else's spot. Okay. That's all. I love you. Kim and I love you. We want the best for you. We understand you may not feel comfortable with that, but at the same time, if you're looking for the results, I'm going to get you to where you need to go as a whole. Okay. With me, I'm going to create custom actionable steps for you to build your business, increase your profits, work on your marketing, create financial freedom that you're seeking. Okay. One of the, let me finish this and I'll come back to that. What we're also going to include is each applicant is going to get 12 group coaching calls to help you elevate your business and be around other like-minded business owners. Okay. Be around other like-minded business owners. You become who you hang around with. We all know this. We've heard the statement time and time and time again. So why not be around other folks with similar values and similar goals? Each applicant, this is the icing on the cake. Okay. Each approved applicant will get to join Kim and I in our home for 1 full day in person. Now, this means I got to take 10 days out of the next 12 weeks to meet with each person in our home, in our office. And Kim and I are going to sit down with you and personally identify each step. We're going to help you put systems in place. We'll help your branding, your marketing, whatever it is, wherever your, I say, weak spot is, we're going to fill that hole. And we're going to align and, how you say, expose the tools and resources and the things that you need to help accomplish what it is you want to accomplish. But we're going to do that in person. We're going to do that face to face, not on Zoom, not over a phone. We're going to have those as well. Okay. But we're going to do this face to face. You can fly here to Canton, Ohio. You can fly in the night before. We're going to spend a day together. If you want to fly out that afternoon, great. If you want to spend the night another night, great. We'll most likely take you out to dinner, depending upon what your travel schedule is. But we're going to spend an entire day just focused on you and your business and your goals and your focus. All right. So that being said, you get to come here and spend the whole day with us. The Pivot Business Accelerator requires a personal application. I mentioned this in the beginning, and an interview process to receive an invitation to attend. Okay. You can apply. Okay. There's a questionnaire. It's about 10, 12 questions. And there's a disclosure, what the investment is, all that. You can go to https://thethriving.investor.com/pivot. And Pivot is all about turning your business around. And being so, I've been in business since I was 16. I've never, ever faced an IRS audit. I've never had an IRS audit. I've never had a failed business. I've never had a business that didn't make money. I have a very long track record of successful businesses in different industries, not just notes, but in real estate and landscaping and construction and the automobile industry. I've had a lot of different businesses over the years. My point being is, it doesn't matter what business you're in. If you're in the real estate game, great, come on over. If you're in the note space, great, come on over. If you're in some other space, great, come on over. One of the reasons that I dropped out of college was my English teacher. I wrote a paper in English. It was literally the first week of English. And she wanted to see kind of what our writing style was and things of that nature. So she said, write on whatever you want to write on. So I wrote on a business. And I handed it to her. And she gave me a great grade on it. And she called me in after class and she said, hey, my husband and I own a Hallmark store. And could you stop by our store and help us understand what we can do better with the store? Now, my background was not in retail at all, although my mother's background was in retail and I was around it. My grandfather's background was in retail as well. I was around that. So when I stopped by and I visited with her and her husband, I pointed out some things that I saw that they could improve upon, and they put those things in place, and immediately they saw an 8% increase in profitability over the next 30 days in their business. So that was just one of those things that came from being in college. Now, great teacher, enjoyed her class. It wasn't until the next semester that I actually dropped out of college. That was in my first semester. But so it doesn't really matter what business you're in or field of expertise or the direction you're going. I'm not invested in your vision for yourself. I'm invested in the fact that you have the right tools to accomplish the vision that you want to accomplish. Okay. So I'm not invested in whether I like your vision. There are people's visions I don't agree with, but I think they're great visions, but I wouldn't do them for myself. But I have no problem helping them get to where they want to go because they're cool visions. I wouldn't do them. But then again, I don't have the skill set to do some of that stuff. So that's why I wouldn't do them. And I don't say that to be harsh or tough exterior or any of those other things, but I'm more invested in that you understand and have the right tools to accomplish your dream than I am about whether I agree with your dream. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Okay. But hopefully it does. But like I said, we got 10 spots. That's it. Okay. Literally, because this is one-on-one, I only have 10 spots. It's just that simple. Real simply, go to thethriving.investor.com/pivot. You'll see a one-page questionnaire. Go through there and answer your various questions. Then you'll see a disclosure about the investment and the training. If that works for you, then schedule a call. And you and I will jump on a call. We're going to be doing calls next week, Monday through Friday. We're going to be doing calls. And through that, we'll actually extend the applications, or I say the acceptance aspects, to the folks that align with us. We want to make sure we're a good fit with you. We just do. We want you guys to win. As a whole, you don't take people's money just for the sake of taking people's money. And if we're not a good fit, then we still want to support you, but we just don't want to take your money, if that makes sense. I take fiduciary responsibilities very seriously when it comes to stuff like that. All right. So go there, grab your spot, fill out an application, set your time. We'll jump on a call, you and me. I'm going to personally do the calls. I don't have a sales staff, sales team, stuff like that. That's just not part of our business model. But with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Be safe out there. We love you guys. We want nothing but the best for you. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye now.